Hi, this is Sara, and I'm going to be doing a lesson called The Green Book, Black Traveler's Guide to Happy Motoring. And Gail Ekus was really helpful in getting me stayed on this lesson. I work with the Arizona Geographic Alliance, and this lesson would be perfect for 7th and 8th grade, and it'll take you about 2 class periods. Now, I first heard about this book about 10 years ago, and my folks lived in North Carolina, and I can remember driving down Highway 17 and thinking, if I were a black traveler in the 1950s, I wonder where I would be able to stop. Throughout our lives, we will be making decisions about moving to a different part of town, a new city, state, or even nation. This activity will focus on the reasoning that goes into making such a migration. The purpose is the students will understand the role of social networking. Yes, they had it back then too, only without computers, and how that played in African American business and leisure travel along America's highways before the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. Materials that you need include this book, Ruth and the Green Book by Calvin Ramsey. You'll also need the following worksheets, Travelers and the Green Book. And basically what we did, or what Gail did, was she took 2 articles that we got from the website and combined them to make the readability a little bit lower. You'll also need a map of Route 66 and then a paper that actually shows the Route 66 corridor presentation. And then in your packet, you're going to be getting an answer key to that said presentation. And then you'll also need this, which is a citation for my research worksheet. It really helps if you have access to a computer lab. If you don't, you can do this in your classroom by just having your students use the classroom computers a couple at a time. Objectives. Number 1, students will be able to describe the impact that the Jim Crow laws had on African Americans. And 2, they're going to integrate visual information with other information in print. The procedure would be, I always start this by having the students think of a road trip that they took that lasted several days. And again, share your stories with the students. I can remember driving to my grandparents' house in a 1958 Ford station wagon, 3 other brothers and sisters, no air conditioning, and just, talk about that with them because they like to hear stories like that too. Have them make a list of the preparations before and during the trip. Have the students work in partners to list the items, 1 item per turn, passing the paper back and forth without talking. And after 2 minutes, have them stop and just kind of look. You'll be able to see what we do now and compare it to what Ruth did when she took her journey. And then you're going to read the book or ebook. And many of the books that I've been using, you can find on ebook. And the book, again, is entitled Ruth and the Green Book. And you want to share the illustrations with the students because for many of the students, this is where they get their art lessons. They're not able to go to art museums. And the illustrations by Floyd Cooper are amazing. So I'm in about the beginning, but not quite the beginning. And basically, Ruth's family has just purchased a new car. They're living in Chicago, and they're going to take that car to travel down to visit grandparents in Alabama. So they've just had a great picnic lunch that their mom prepared before they left, and it goes as follows. After driving for a long time, we stopped at a service station to fill up on gas. As Daddy was paying the service station attendant, Mama asked for the key to the restroom. The man said we couldn't use the restroom because they were for whites only. Mama and I had to go into the woods. I was embarrassed, but Mama said the people who should be embarrassed of themselves were those service station owners. I was tired when Daddy stopped the automobile. I asked Mama where we were, and she said we were going to spend the night at a real hotel. We watched Daddy talking to the man behind the desk. Daddy was smiling and pointing to us, but the man shook his head and turned his back. Daddy came back and slammed the car door. He never slammed the car door before, and I knew he was mad. I wondered what happened, but I knew somehow it wasn't a good time to ask him. Mama gave me a look that said, "Ruth, just keep quiet." So that's what I did. Then you're going to read the Travelers and the Green Book worksheet that I showed earlier. And this combines the two websites that had articles, the History of the Negro Motorist Green Book and the Car and Jim Crow articles. I would definitely have the students highlight what travelers did in areas where there were no services for blacks. Session 2, what you're going to do is you're going to tell the students that they're going to plan a road trip for the characters in the story. Only this time, they're traveling from Chicago to Los Angeles using Route 66. They will be divided into groups. Each group will be assigned a city to research in a scanned copy of the 1949 The Green Book, which you can find and access on the internet. Their task will be to make one PowerPoint slide with 2 images for a trip, and then having a scrapbook and guidebook. So they should check the Green Book for hotels, gas stations, and any other places that would provide services to the characters from the story. And there you see a picture of the Green Book. It's much bigger than that, and it comes in different editions, but there is a website in South Carolina that has scanned the whole thing, so they're able to use that one. Now, the slide that they make will have 2 images, and the information that they write in there should be believable for a 1950s traveler. The next thing that is so crucial is to have the citation worksheet. You're going to show the students the sample PowerPoint slide leaving Chicago for the beginning of the journey. And then you're going to explain how to use this citation for my research worksheet and the scoring system. Now, I was a tech teacher, and for many students, if they were going to do research on the internet, all they did was find the subject that they were looking for, and then they just printed it off and they plastered it on a board. Now, what we want students to make sure that they do is 1, they list the source, and 2, make sure that they know it is accurate and be able to give reasons why they think their source is accurate. And then make sure that they note it on this paper so that they can turn it in. And they can also include it in the bibliography that they do at the end of the PowerPoint. So here's an example. First page could have leaving Chicago. So we said goodbye to our old home, and you can see that that picture would probably be believable because it's an old home. And then we got in the car and we headed for Route 66. And there are many websites that have maps, and it looks like the map that Route 66 would follow. The procedure, this is how you could do it in your classroom or in your computer lab would be perfect. Show the students the online version or printed copy of the Green Book. Now, use Chicago as an example of what is listed. However, in some cities, not all services, gas, hotel, and restaurants are given. In fact, when they get to Arizona, they're going to have to be real creative about the services that they're going to have to use. Students should then describe what they had to do to make up for those services that are not available. For example, they could say there were no hotels available for black travelers, so they had to sleep at a tent. There's no restaurant. Well, we had to stop at a food store and get things and then store additional food in the car to have for later. They can add clip art or actual historical photos to make this seem believable. Now, what's also important is groups may need to communicate with the cities prior to their city in the journey. In other words, the Holbrook group might need to talk with Flagstaff or any other route places in case that they might need to have to stop and purchase food or look for other supplies and services. Groups should write their conclusion page as if they are commenting today on how things have changed for Black travelers since the time of the Green Book. The teacher's going to combine these group slides, or you know what, have a student combine them and put them in order of the cities listed on Route 66. At a later date, show the students the complete PowerPoint and have students share their conclusion paragraphs. Assessment. PowerPoint slide and conclusion statement can be graded for geography, civics, history, reading, and writing according to the scoring guide that you included on the citations for my research worksheet. Mastery will be considered 80% or higher. If you have an accelerated reader program or a similar computer comprehension program, they can take a quiz on Ruth and the Green Book, and then mastery would be what you would consider mastery. Generally, it's 80% or higher. Extensions. This is really cool. You could invite a guest speaker to class to talk about traveling in the U.S. and using the Green Book. But remember, it went out of date in roughly 1962 or so when the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. And then have students interview friends or families that might have used the Green Book. Or you could research the connections between Esso, Rockefeller, Standard Oil, the Green Book, and Spelman College. In fact, you would get the Green Book from Esso stations. And I thought about using the tiger in the tail, but I couldn't think of anything, so I've got happy motoring. Or you could visit some of the businesses listed in the Green Book and take pictures or interview neighbors about the sites. And that's what I plan to do when I go back sometime to North Carolina. And other books that would be wonderful to share, for they could read on their own, would be The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963, by Christopher Paul Curtis. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. It has a lot to say about how we've changed in less than 50 years.